biggest losers of the season were. Swagoo, who you got?
You know who it is, G. It's the Houston Texans. Deshaun Watson wants out. He's been the only bright spot there outside of this guy who they decided to trade away. I don't know who allowed that to happen. And then when you think about the decisions this organization has made, look at what they got for DeAndre Hopkins. It's not only about getting rid of these. David Johnson, a second and a fourth round pick for arguably a top 3 receiver. If you could argue he's the number 1 guy in the league. The Houston Texans are the biggest loser, and they still got some losing to do.
That one's hard to argue with. Graziano, who have you got?
I got the Philadelphia Eagles. Look, 3 years ago, they're coming off a Super Bowl title. They made the playoffs each of the next 2 years. This year, they finished last in a division where no one finished 500. They fire the coach that helped them win that Super Bowl. The quarterback, who's the franchise quarterback they just signed to a big contract a couple years ago, looks like he's on the way out. And this team looks like it's about to start from scratch.
I agree. Hard to argue with that one as well. How about you, Jeff Saturday?
Got to be the Pittsburgh Steelers. Listen, offensive line that played soft after the hottest start in the NFL with a defense that could have carried you. They can't run the football. They have an aging quarterback who's got a huge cap number. They got a ton of questions to answer about their roster and how they can improve this football team. So disappointed how their season ended. I would say the Steelers were definitely the biggest loser of this year.
That's a fascinating one. I mean, life comes at you fast. They were 11-0, and now here they are, the biggest loser going into this offseason. And this is a very important little moment, a juncture for the Steelers, Dan Graziano, and their legendary quarterback. Tell us about it.
Jeff mentions that cap number. It's $41.25 million if he's on the team this year, the highest in the league. So the Steelers and Ben Roethlisberger have to have a conversation about what to do about that. How do you lower that cap number? Well, one way they can lower it is to extend his contract and dump salary cap hits into future years. They could do that, and there's some sense that they will do that because of what he's meant to that franchise. But the most they can save by doing that is about $14 million. Whereas if they cut him or he retires, they save $19 million on the cap. And that could make the difference for a team that has a lot of free agents to sign, a lot of great young players that are coming due for extensions. It's a tricky situation, and it could end up, there is a chance that it ends up with Ben Roethlisberger not being on the 2021 Steelers.
Fascinating. So I'm trying to read your face. Go.
The conundrum, G. Think about it, man. I think it's so fascinating for me when we look at this Pittsburgh Steelers case study with Ben Roethlisberger and how up in arms people are about what the Green Bay Packers did drafting Jordan Love. Like, this is what you're probably supposed to do, what Green Bay did. Now that we are sitting here with this situation in Pittsburgh, you got to make a definitive decision about your quarterback. And Ben has expressed his willingness to come back and play for less money. But with that being said, like Grimes just laid out, they need so much more. And I'm not sure if Ben is still in that elite status where he can raise you above what you're lacking from an offensive or defensive standpoint. Don't forget, Bud Dupree got injured. He's going to be a free agent. He got to find money somewhere. So it's a lot of things that the Pittsburgh Steelers need to do. And to have this situation without any quarterback to turn to is a problem.
Yeah. It's important, as we sort of read history, Jeff. Terry Bradshaw left the Steelers, the legendary former Steeler, under less than outstanding circumstances, and that relationship has really never been okay again, and that's 40 years ago. So you sort of have to walk a little bit of a fine line as you handle this. What do you think of it, Jeff Saturday?
No, what you just said is so right. Is the balance between the relationship with Ben post-career more important than what's happening right now? Because Dan just outlined it, and so Swagoo, the nucleus of this team is actually really good, right? You have a bunch of really young players who can win a lot of football games, and then you have this $41 million number that you just can't seem to find a way. There are a lot of quarterbacks who would like to step into a situation with the defense they have on that side of the ball and then working to repair this offensive line and run game and be able to help this this team win. They got a lot of good talent on the outside at receiver. Listen, I'm just telling you, you got to worry about now, or you worry about a relationship post-career. I think now has to be the focus for the Steelers football team.
Yeah, this is not a team that ever rebuilds, right? They kind of reload on the fly.
Yeah.
We'll see. There is a scenario here where even if both sides want it to happen, Roethlisberger doesn't come back. We'll talk more about that. Meanwhile, there's another team that you could put on the list of big losers from this season. That would be the Dallas Cowboys, who behaved like a win-now team and then didn't do any winning. And they and their star quarterback, Dak Prescott, of course, are still nowhere near a deal to keep him in Dallas long-term. They were prohibited from negotiating a new deal during the season, but they now are allowed to resume contract talks now that the disappointing season has come to an end. And Dan, you talked about this on our show last week, and then Shefty had some reporting about it over the weekend. This does not seem to be getting any closer to getting a deal done here.
No, my sense is that they're really not in a significantly different place than they were last summer when the deadline passed without a deal. But look, the Cowboys are taking the position in negotiations that they have to figure out what the salary cap is going to be before they can do a deal. We can talk about whether that's just a negotiating position or whether that's true, but that's where they are. And Dak's side continues to want the shorter-term deal. The Cowboys continue to want the longer-term deal that allows them to defray the salary cap cost, and on it goes. The date is March 9th. That's the latest you can apply the franchise tag this year. The Cowboys will certainly do that if they don't have a deal in place by then, but their preference, and Dak Prescott's, is that a deal is done before then, and they will continue to work on it. Look, we can talk about how it's not close, and that's because they haven't made any progress, but fact of the matter is one phone call could go from not close to almost done, right, if somebody just decides to take a step in the other's direction. But right now there hasn't been any reason to do that, and March 9th is the date to keep an eye on.
Okay, so all that is out there. And then there is a part of this story, and I was reading about it this morning in the Dallas Morning News. It is very interesting, even if it isn't at all important. The Cowboys released a 32-second hype video on their official Twitter, their verified Twitter feed. It is a 32-second video showing Cowboys legends and a whole lot of moments of current Cowboys players. There are quite a few current Cowboys that are shown on this video, and very notably, one of them is not Dak Prescott. There are a combined total of 0 shots of Dak Prescott on this video. There are quite a few players in here that you know well. There were some players on here whose names I had to look up. But that was the 32-second video. Dak's brother, Tad Prescott, friend of the show, quote tweeted that, and with just that emoji of like, isn't that interesting? So once again, I want to make it clear. The notion that this somehow was Jerry Jones sending a message, no one is saying that. So it is interesting, if not important. Swagoo, what do you think of Dak being left off the 32-second Cowboys hype video?
Gee, you know I like to get emotional about the Cowboys, and I don't look at this as something small, man. Like, and look, I know.
For real.
Let me say this: because no franchise, no organization makes a hype video without their quarterback when the quarterback is the best player on the team. Like that.
That's right.
How many checks? How many times did the social media team look at this and say, you know what, maybe we should put our franchise, quote unquote, quarterback in the highlight video who broke his ankle trying to make a play in order to continue this team, to try to get this team a win. Like, so, yeah, call me petty, call me emotional swagoo, but I know Green Bay Packers ain't doing no highlight video without Aaron Rodgers. Before this season, the Philadelphia Eagles wouldn't have did a highlight video without Carson Wentz.